All right, everybody, welcome back to Pure Potential. My name is Paul, and today I'm going to be giving you 6 players that you should be buying in your Dynasty leagues right now. We got free agency coming up in a few weeks. That's going to set some players up and down the rankings. It's going to create a little bit of volatility in the Dynasty market. But if you can strike right now in the next couple of weeks, I think there are some really major price inefficiencies that we can exploit. Throughout this video, I'm going to be citing Startup ADP from dynastydatalabs.com. That's personally my favorite place to go for sort of a rough estimate of market value. But you can also use sites like Fantasy Calc and Keep Trade Cut, which I'll be citing as well with each player, just so we can get kind of a consensus of how they're being valued in the community. All right, let's get into it. First up, we've got Kyler Murray, quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. He's currently going as the 10th quarterback off the board in startups, around 22nd overall, and he's pretty closely valued there on Fantasy Calc and Keep Trade Cut as well, 23rd overall, QB 11 on both sides. So there is a consensus value around Kyler. I just think that it's too low. He's 26 and a half years old. He's been a QB1 basically every season of his career. Dating back to 2020, which includes last season when he was coming off of an ACL tear, he's been the QB8, QB7, QB4, and QB3 in points per game over those 4 seasons. That is just a really good track record of production. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been mocked to the Cardinals pretty consistently. That would be huge for Kyler's value. I'd expect him to actually rise in ADP if that's the case. Another reason to try to get it on him early. But even if they don't add Marvin Harrison, Kyler has succeeded with all sorts of weaponry around him, and I'm not really worried about him one way or the other. I just think that people have concerns about his real life play that, frankly, they just don't concern me. He's definitely one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the league. He's going to be a starter next year and the year after that and the year after that. So whether or not he's actually elite or a high-end talent, at least in that regard, I think he's undervalued. Right now, he's going after guys like Trevor Lawrence, Breece Hall, Anthony Richardson. I think he should be going ahead of those players. I actually view Kyler as a late first round startup pick, kind of 111, 112 range. So getting him in the middle of the second round, that's a pretty significant discount. All right, now we're going to talk about another quarterback who's been the butt of a lot of jokes over the past couple of years, and for good reason. That's Deshaun Watson, who honestly, I think is one of the most mispriced players in Dynasty. I know there's a bit of an ick factor discount with Deshaun Watson, but being drafted 60th overall as the quarterback 17 off the board, it's just too low for me. There's this consensus that Watson was just egregiously bad last season, and I think that's maybe overstating things a little bit. He had up and down play for sure. He had some rough performances, especially when he was dealing with that injury, but he had good games against the Titans, against the Cardinals, and even in that comeback win against the Ravens, he did some pretty impressive things. And more importantly, his fantasy finishes were pretty solid when you just look at his games that he actually started and finished. In 4 of those games, he finished as the QB5, the QB8, the QB10, and the QB14. So he's still mobile. He still runs. He's probably not that same elite passer that we saw in Houston. So I don't know if the ceiling's as high as it once was, but you don't need him to hit that type of a ceiling to really pay off at his price. He's only 28 years old, and he's good enough to remain a starter in the league for many, many years to come. I don't have any concerns about his job security in the near term, and I think he's being undervalued as a dynasty asset. Watson's prices on Fantasy Calc and Keep Trade Cut are even more out of control. He's going around the 80th overall pick as the QB 21, QB 22. That's just outrageous. I don't know how you could even list 20 quarterbacks that you'd want ahead of him. If anyone in your leagues is relying on those sites as a source of dynasty value, trade calculator, anything like that, you can definitely use that to your advantage. Okay, you must have seen the thumbnail. You must have known this was coming, and you clicked on the video anyway. Here's the thing. Kyle Pitts is a buy in Dynasty. I know, he's hurt you. I call it the trauma tax. He has hurt us. He has wounded us. He has taken money out of our bank accounts. Because of that, his value has tanked. I think 60th overall is just way too low for a player with Kyle Pitts upside. And before you run to the comments to say that he doesn't have upside and he's obviously a fraud or a bust, let's just rewind the tape for a second and let's talk about what's really happened with Kyle Pitts over the years. There's this thing fantasy players do. If a player fails twice in a row, they're basically just done. They're dead. It doesn't matter if the player failed for 2 totally different reasons or 2 totally explainable reasons. There's just no way that a player can fail to meet expectations twice in a row and then succeed on the 3rd attempt. I think that's a mistake with Pitts. I think there's a very good reason that he failed in year 2 and in year 3. They're different reasons, and both of those reasons could go away in 2024. Obviously, we know that that first season was great. Pitts had a 20% target share as a rookie. That was 6th among all tight ends. He was 2nd in air yard share. He was 4th in yards per route run. He had over 1,000 receiving yards. It was a historic rookie season. All signs pointing to a massive breakout in year 2, which we did not get. It wasn't really Pitt's fault. It was all about the offense in year 2. The passing volume was historically low. The quarterback play was some of the worst in the NFL. Some of Pitt's peripheral numbers in year 2 actually improved. Most notably, his targets per out run was through the roof. There just weren't enough pass attempts for him. And even when they did throw the ball, the passes were off target. So he just couldn't succeed in that environment. And then obviously he has the injury that ends his season early. We head into year 3. He's supposed to be fully healthy for week 1, but what we find out after the season is that he was actually dealing with a PCL injury along with an MCL injury, and he never really got right. There were all these videos on Twitter of him like only being able to turn to the right and really not looking like himself. That he's an athletic freak, and he did not look like an athletic freak in 2023. I think that can be chalked up mostly to injury, but even still, we have a dysfunctional offense that led to Arthur Smith getting fired. He got fired for a reason. He didn't know how to use his best playmakers. We have Raheem Morris taking over as the coach. We're bringing in Zach Robinson as the offensive coordinator from the Rams. I think that this is going to be a much more friendly offensive environment. Really, he just needs a quarterback for everything to kind of click into place. If the Falcons get a quarterback, if they get Kirk Cousins or they trade up for Drake May, even if they get Justin Fields, I think you're going to see Pitt's value take a massive leap. And I'd rather get in early on that. This is a player whose talent I still believe in strongly. He's younger than Dalton Kincaid. He's 23 years old. It's just too early to be writing him off as a bust in fantasy and taking players over him that really don't have the same type of path to accruing value or providing difference-making production. I'm ready to get hurt again with Kyle Pitts. I hope that you are too. 4th on the list, we've got Davante Adams, whose ADP is in the 70s at this point, wide receiver 28. That's just too low for a player of his talent. I know that he's 31 years old. He hasn't really shown any signs that he's declining. He was actually the wide receiver 5 in expected points per game per PFF last season. Adams was actually one of PFF's biggest underperformers in terms of points per game versus expected points per game. And that happens when you only have a 69% catchable target rate. You look at other top receivers, Lamb, Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Jamar Chase, they had significantly higher catchable target rates. I guess that's what happens when you play with Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell for the entire season. I don't know who the Raiders quarterback is going to be in 2024. I know it's not going to be Aiden O'Connell, which is a good thing for Davante Adams. So I want to capitalize on this dip. I want to buy back into an elite receiver. Yes, the cliff can come at any time for any of these older wide receivers, but I have not seen anything that tells me Davante Adams is approaching that cliff. He's going after guys like James Cook and Josh Jacobs, who as running backs have their own fragility issues in the first place, and I don't think have the same type of upside as Adams. And he's in the same ballpark ADP-wise as Baker Mayfield, Javonte Williams. I just think that this is a different class of asset. This is a different type of upside that you just don't usually see in the 7th round. And I want to take advantage of that. All right, let's go deep for this next one. This is a player I touted all offseason last year, and I looked pretty stupid for it, and that's Greg Dulcich. But I don't really want to take the blame for that because he basically missed the entire season due to injury. He's being totally left for dead with an ADP at 182, the 23rd tight end off the board. He's going in the 16th round. If you haven't done a startup lately, let me tell you, the 16th round is a wasteland. There is nobody there that you want to pick, except in my opinion, for Greg Dulcich. I think it's likely that Dulcich just remains the starter for the Broncos and enters the season that way against some pretty weak competition overall. My biggest concern for Dulcich would really be the quality of the Broncos offense. It could be pretty poor. But in terms of competition, there's just not a lot there between Judy and Sutton and Marvin Mims. He can bounce back from this injury. I think he can take over a pretty decent role in the offense. He hasn't turned 24 yet. And let's not forget, his rookie season was very impressive. He averaged 41 receiving yards per game as a rookie across 10 games. That's actually the 5th most of any rookie tight end since the year 2000, behind Kyle Pitts, Jeremy Shockey, Evan Ingram, and Jordan Reed, who have all had a good amount of fantasy success. So I think that speaks to the weapon that he can be as a receiver at these like bottom of the barrel prices. I just don't see why you wouldn't buy back into that. Here are some players being drafted in the same round as Greg Dulcich right now: J.K. Dobbins, Jalen Hyatt, Trey Palmer, Aiden O'Connell, Zach Moss. I don't think any of those guys have a legitimate shot to be difference makers at their position. And Greg Dulcich has better hair than every single one of them. Let's finish this up with a year 2 wide receiver who's going a little bit later in drafts as well. That's Demario Douglas from the New England Patriots. His startup ADP is wide receiver 51 at about 160th overall. For some reason, he's way lower on fantasy calc. He's in like the 240s. I don't really know why they hate him so much over there, but wide receiver 77 is just outrageous. Either way, he had a pretty decent rookie season, 79 targets. He had 561 receiving yards in 14 games as an undrafted free agent. He took a little while to get going early in the season, which is not really surprising for an undrafted free agent. But if you look at the back half of the season, his target shares really started to spike. Over the last 8 games that he played, he didn't have a single game with a target share under 17%, and he was actually above 20% in 5 of those games. So he was really starting to take on a role, and the Patriots have no weapons. Even if they were to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3rd overall, which I don't really think they're going to do, there's still so much room for another weapon to carve out a significant chunk of the offense. And look, it's possible that his volume was a little bit inflated just due to a lack of competition. The Patriots lost Kendrick Bourne early in the season, and then he was competing with Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster, Hunter Henry. So I'll grant you, not a lot of competition for targets, but he had the 6th highest PFF grade among all rookie wide receivers last year, and his targets per out run of 23% was higher than guys like Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Josh Downs. The way I see Douglas is you're really buying into a kind of a similar profile as guys like Downs and Addison and Flowers, granted without the draft capital, but at a much, much lower cost. And I think he really does have upside similar to those players. It's just really going to depend on what the Patriots can do at quarterback and if they can field a functional offense at all. That's really baked into his price where he's going right now. He's in the same range as Gabriel Davis in startups, Chuba Hubbard, Raheem Mostert, Chiga Okonkwo. In terms of all the players around him, I think Douglas does have the most upside and honestly one of the higher floors as well. All right, that's it for today. I hope you can go out and get some of those trades done. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. I should have a new video out at least once a week or so. And then also, if you have any ideas for video topics, leave a comment down below. I'll try to get to it if I can. Otherwise, good luck out there, and I'll see you next time.